Hi, and welcome to part 3 of our Amiga 500 refurb and upgrade series. So in the last video, we looked at the hard drive, and we found we had to go through a number of steps to actually get it working, but eventually we did get it working. And if you're interested in that, please watch the previous video to see how that went. Doing it involved installing a Kickstart 3.21 ROM, which I had at hand, which wasn't actually needed for an Amiga 2000 refurb that I did a while back. So we have that installed now. What I want to do next is I want to get this machine to have 1 megabyte of chip RAM. So this is a new expansion that I bought from Amiga Kit, and this has 512K of memory on board. It just connects to the trapdoor expansion here. What's interesting about this expansion is that it has a jumper on it, which allows you to toggle it to work as 512K of chip RAM, which we've explained in a previous video what the difference between chip and fast and slow RAM is. And that's what I want to do. So to make that happen, we need to make a small change to the logic board, which is actually quite near that 3.2 ROM. So what we're going to go and do now is we're going to make that change, and we'll come back here when that's ready and see how that went. But before we do that, I want to show you what we have right now on this machine in terms of memory. So I'm just going to turn on the screen here, and we'll have a look at what we've got right now. So let's just turn on the machine and wait for it to boot up. Takes a while. I need to do some research into this, why it takes such a long time to load from this hard disk, but let's just wait for it to boot up. Here we go. So you can see, I think, yeah, here we go. So it's saying that we have 408K of graphics memory, and that means chip RAM. And we have 1.13 megabytes of other memory. So if we go into the boot drive, I've actually transferred onto this machine sysinfo, which will give us a slightly better readout of the memory. Just going to load that up. If we go to the memory section in here, it tells you that we have 2 megabytes of fast RAM. And if we go to the next section of memory, you can see that it has 512K of chip RAM. And we want to get this up to being 1 megabyte of chip RAM. And to do that, we need to do that mod. So let's go and do that now. Let's get this logic board ready to have the chip RAM updated. Okay, so I've moved to my table where we're going to do the modification. And I thought I'd take the opportunity to give you a little bit of a better tour of the board. So this is where the chip RAM sits. And you can see that there are these empty sockets. Well, not sockets, but places on the board where you can actually put chips. And you can see that they are exact mirrors of the chips which actually have been populated. Obviously, if you could get hold of this type of RAM, and I think these are capacitors, you could solder these in yourself. I think these through holes are actually there. They've just been filled in by Commodore. And that's actually another technique for giving this machine another 512K of memory. Now, I'm assuming I would have to do the same modification to make it into chip RAM. It's going to end up being basically 512K of chip RAM and 512K of slow RAM. But yeah, that's another option. And I'm wondering, you know, if I did that and I used a 1 megabyte trapdoor expansion, would that allow me to have 1 mega chip RAM and 1 meg of slow RAM? It's an interesting idea. So, you know, why did Commodore do this? Well, I have to assume that at some point they thought maybe this was something they wanted to do themselves. So they've kind of left the door open there. That might have been something actually from the early days of the Amiga. I'm not quite sure really. Right, so I actually used some Brasso before I started recording. Rather, I used some Silvo, I should say, a little bit posher. And the reason for that is if I turn the logic board around, all of the ports here were looking very, very tarnished. I've given these a polish a few times, and they're still a little bit tarnished, you can see that. But they're a lot better. If I showed you the cleaning cloth, let's just pop it on here for a second. Yeah, those black spots are where the tarnish has come off. Yeah, so definitely worth doing that to get rid of some of the the dirt off. I've polished the joystick ports, the phono ports, all the ports on the outside. Obviously I can't clean the pins internally, but that's got the ports on the back looking shiny again, which is quite nice. Let me turn the board around again because I just want to show you the revision of the board. It's a 6A board. Don't know if you can see that bottom right. Actually says 6A there, A500 revision 6A. It did have this sticker on top of it with 8 written on it when I received it. So I don't know if that was something which Commodore had internally, this idea of this being a revision 8 board. Seems quite strange that they would do that. There is a jumper here, which I believe is involved in the chip RAM modification. However, I think in my case I don't need to use it because I'm assuming that the RAM expansion that I have, which has a jumper on it, actually does the same thing. I'm going to test that out by doing the minimal modification. I'm going to leave this intact and then I'm going to test it and see if I get 512K or chip RAM after the mod. So if we go over here, this is actually where the pad is. It's JP2. It's just right next to the ROM there. It's in a bit of an awkward location. Just turn the board around a bit so you can see it more easily. So I'm just going to zoom right in here with these ultra wide lens so you can see this more easily. Now then, I think you can see that those two pads are bridged. So we need to cut those pads, and then what we need to do is solder these two pads together here. And that should then make the modification that we need. So yeah, let's do that now. Let's get set up and get that mod done. Okay, so we've got the pad there lined up in my sights. Actually say this ROM's slightly in the way, wouldn't you say? So let's get that out of there. So I'm just going to use my plastic spudger to get this out. So I've removed the ROM from the socket because it's slightly overshadowing the pad actually and makes it quite difficult to cut it. And before we make the cut, I just want to show that we have continuity. So I'm turning on my multimeter and setting it to continuity. So here and here should have continuity, right? And it does. We want to stop that. So I'm going to do this cut a couple of attempts to make it nice and light. Okay, let's check that. No continuity. No more continuity there. Check one more time. Yeah, nothing. Next, I'm going to power up, turn off the multimeter there. I'm going to power up my soldering iron, get some solder ready. I'm not going to use, actually maybe just a tiny bit of flux. Just put a tiny little blob there. That looks okay. Yeah. Okay, let's turn on the soldering iron. I'm going to set it to 350 degrees. Wait for it to get up to temperature. It should be there now. Okay, I'm just going to melt the flux a bit. There we go. That looks like it. I think we're done. Turn off the soldering iron. Okay, and now we just need to check continuity, make sure that's good. So first of all, turn on the multimeter again. It's in continuity mode. Check between this pad and this pad. Nothing, and obviously that will work. Good. All I need to do now is clean off the flux using a bit of alcohol and a toothbrush or a cotton swab or something like that. We should be good to go. So what I'm going to do now is take this back into the studio and we're going to check to see if this has actually worked. Okay, so we've made the modifications I need to make to this board here. I've actually cleaned off the soldered pad there with some alcohol just to get rid of the flux. My proposition is that with a jumper change on this Amiga kit, expansion board here. You can see there's a jumper here. If I take this off, hopefully it will do the same thing as the jumper that you can see here on the logic board, and that will actually make this be used as chip RAM. So we'll end up with 1 megabytes of chip RAM. So let's get it plugged into the board. This is obviously the trapdoor expansion here. So it's a bit fiddly putting this on. Here we go. That's actually not too bad. I've had a bit of a fight with this in the past to get it on. I think the pins maybe might be a little bit bent. There we go. It's fitting on there pretty snugly. And what we'll do now is we'll boot into Workbench and we'll see what that's giving us. I don't know if it's clear there, but I've actually put the jumper on one of the pins, so it's actually not, it's open. I think if it's closed, it'll actually try and use it as slow RAM. So yeah, let's do that now. Let's boot up the machine and let's see if that modification has worked. Okay, so let's boot up the machine. And first of all, does it boot? Yeah, good. Okay, we have life. That's good. And I can hear the floppy disk drive is making its noises, looking for a disk. And I can see the activity light here, both here and here actually. The nice thing about this is the activity light here is actually the same as this one. Electronics gets passed through, so it works fine. So we just have to do the usual wait now for this to boot up. Okay, there we are, it's booted up. And you can see that we now have 1 megabyte of graphics memory and the same amount of fast memory, obviously. So the modification has actually worked. What's quite interesting it was such a simple modification. All I really had to do was cut the one trace on here between two pads and then just solder in a little blob of solder and it was done. And in conjunction with this memory expansion from Amiga Kit with a jumper on it, I didn't have to make this modification here, which I think would have been necessary normally. It looks like this jumper does the same thing in a less destructive way, which is really cool. What else could I do with this machine in the future in terms of memory? Well, I mean, there's the possibility I could buy the chips for this area here on the board and actually populate this 512K section here. And obviously you need the capacitors to go with that. To do that, I think you'd have to suck the solder out of the holes using some kind of suction pump and just solder the chips in. Obviously there's the cost of sourcing the chips, hoping that they're not fake, hoping that they work as well. Obviously that's an issue. And then just soldering it in really. And if we did that, I don't think we would need this trapdoor to give us 1 meg of chip RAM. We would have 1 meg of chip RAM on board. The question then begs is, would this be useless? Well, I don't think it would, because I've heard that for some of the older games, you actually need some slow RAM. I'm not sure how true that is, but I've taken on advisement and I believe it's true that there are certain games that just literally won't load unless you have some kind of slow RAM. So that could be something that we do in the future. We would then put this jumper back to close it and it would act as slow RAM again. So we then have 1 megabyte of chip RAM and half a meg of slow RAM. Obviously, there are the extra slots inside the sidecar. Currently, we have 2 megabyte in there, and that obviously can be expanded up to 8 megabytes with this particular sidecar, which is really cool. And I definitely think we should do that. You'll notice that when Workbench loads, quite a lot of fast RAM is actually used up for Workbench. This is, Workbench 3.2. I'm assuming if I were to downgrade back to, say, Workbench 2, it would probably use less memory. That's the way things tended to go over time. Obviously, as you wanted more features and you wanted more memory caching and things like that, memory would get used up. It's quite nice to see that on this machine, it's using fast RAM in preference to the chip RAM, and it's just leaving that chip RAM just to be used for what it needs to be used for, which is graphics, things like that. So that's it for the memory mod. Oh, there is one last thing I should say. There is another place here on this board for another chip. So I've got a feeling that if I were to populate that, it would just magically work and we would have then 1 megabyte on this board. So that's also something that I could do in the future. I'd have to find out what this chip is, get a hold of it. It's probably very cheap because it's a modern chip. These are going to be much more expensive probably because they're legacy chips. So that is one thing I could do. If I did all of that, I would end up with 1 meg of chip RAM and 1 meg of slow RAM. not necessarily sure you need 1 meg of slow RAM, but anyway, that would be a possibility that we could do just in case there was any software that needed 1 meg of slow RAM, which I doubt really. This is probably good enough. So yeah, this is what we're going to go with for now until I try it out. You know, it's no point sort of modifying it to the nth degree if we haven't actually used it for anything yet. So I think the next stage now is we just want to put this all back together. So in the next step, we'll start doing that. So I did a bit of a search in my pillbox and it looks like we've got all the bits that we need now. One of the giveaways was that one of the actual screws, I forget which one it is, I think it's this one, actually has the paper, red and white paper from the underside of the case, you know, the warranty seal, which matched up with one of the screw holes. So that pretty much confirmed that these are the right screws. It's, as per usual, a bit of a Jenga puzzle to put this thing back together. We've got the RF shield, which doesn't really need any work on it. It's got the plastic still in there to obviously stop it shorting. So the first thing we need to do is just put that in there, which isn't obviously very difficult. So just need to align this, pop it through there. I've had to take the memory expansion out because it actually fits into a slot inside the actual case. So that's had to come out. Yeah, we basically had to break it down to almost, you know, nothing really to get it back together. So there we are. That's the logic board back in its tray. And what we need to do now is try and get this into the bottom of the case. So I've got the bottom of the case here. There we are. We've lost a bit of plastic there, unfortunately. So I'll have to try and find where that's gone. I did have it the other day and I couldn't work out where it went. It goes there. So it looks like the plastic might be getting a little bit brittle. So I'll have to watch out for it in the future. Or it could be just age-related stress. I mean, it's actually where the power switch was, so the power socket, I should say. So maybe that going in and out over the years has caused it to break. So now we need to angle this up, try and get this into the right position. There we are. Oh, that seemed to slot in okay, didn't it? And I think that's sitting. Right, yeah, it is. It's lined up with the holes on the back of the case. Let's just make sure we do this right. It's very easy to get yourself in the wrong order with these things. So I need to make sure that the RF shield is aligned here. We've got this here, which is another piece of RF shield, which I think fits something like this, maybe. Yeah, that looks right. So that fits on there, and the screw goes down both to hold it in. But what we'll do first is we'll get these screws in here. So yeah, I've done this kind of thing before, and it's always a bit of a nightmare. You get about halfway through and you realize you've got one of the screws in wrong, or you've done something in the wrong order. Yeah, it's not great. That moment of realization. Hopefully I won't have it today. So I'm trying to get this to fit in. There we are. I'm just doing these relatively lightly, right? I don't want it to be super tight. Don't want it to damage the logic board. Check the back again. This looks a little bit off, but it's all lined up, so I should be okay. Okay, next, let's try and get this in, because this is going to be a weird one later. This is going to be quite fiddly, because it's got to go through 2 pieces of metal, and everything's got to line up, so hopefully this will. That looks like it's lining up, so I won't do it tight. I'll just leave it loose for now. Now this one, yeah, that's going in, I think. Okay, a bit loose. There we go. I've already taken out the side expansion door, because we obviously need to plug the GVP in there. And I've taken out the bottom trapdoor to put the memory in. Talking about the memory, let's try and do it now, I think, before we get too far. Just going to turn it over. So there's basically a sort of rails that it slides on. So you can't actually really put it in from above. You have to put it in from below. Just one of those design things that Commodore decided to do that come back to bite you. Just make sure we don't lose that jumper. It's a bit awkward, this. I should just try turning it around. There we are. So now I've got to get it on the pins and then slide it on. There we go. That's in nicely. Put the jumper back on. Keep it safe there. There we are. Okay, now the floppy drive. I believe these two screws are for the floppy drive. We shall see. There are a couple of other screws in here which actually could be for it, except I've only got one. So I'm not sure why that is. It does look like it's the same type, this one. Let's see. Okay, so we have to put this into position first. Where the holes, I think they're here and here. And just so you can see this, this has to go here. I think the washer probably has to go on the outside. So if we can get it to do that, might have to loosen it a bit. Just trying to get it so that the washer sits outside. There we are. Okay, get this in position. That's perfect. Now I need to put the screws in from below. So yeah, this is a real awkward one. This, maybe if we tighten this up, this will keep it in place. It's on a plastic bracket there. Very easy to break that. Ah, 3 screws. Maybe there's another hole here. That's interesting. Yeah, I think there is actually. So I'm having to hold it in position. Hopefully this will go in. I'll just do it lightly. And these two, they feel like they're going in. This one doesn't feel like it. Let's turn it back. Yeah, now it feels like it. That's nice. Yeah. Each of those is quite snug. Let's put the trapdoor back in. I think it fits like that, and then it snaps in. There we are. Turn it back over. The GoTech, I think, is going to go on this as well. So I'm not going to put the RF shield back on. I'll have to find somewhere to store it. The GoTech goes here, so let me get that. Wait, I've got the GoTech. Just take it out. There's the ribbon. There's the internal board. Then we have the breakout board that goes on top. I might have to do a bit of work on this because I found it didn't clip in, and before I bought it I wasn't sure I wanted to try and force it. So I'll have to make sure that I can get this to clip into the case. And what I just said about the brittle plastic comes into play, right? We don't want to break things. So this would normally go in here. So we need to put this into the pass-through board, basically. There we are. And then we need to put the power supply here. Need to take this one off. Again, something to store. Put this in here. Plug this in. This is the awkward bit. Yeah, that went in okay. And then this powers the original floppy drive. So watch the GoTech review if you want to see how this all works. Here we go. Yeah, because of these extra cables, the extra height they give you, you can't really put the RF shield back on. So that's the only downside really, I suppose. Now then, this has to go in here. There's a black cable holder here, so we need to make sure that that's out. And I'll slot this in with the wires, the contacts touching, hopefully. Yeah, I think that's in nicely. And then we just clamp that down. Now in that review, I found out these clamps, they don't hold the cable very tightly, so we don't want to put any stress on it. So let's just leave it like that for now. And so we've got the floppy in, we've got the GoTech in, we have the sidecar off. That's all good. So let's get the keyboard and put that in. So I've got two keyboards here. I don't want to get them mixed up. I'm not sure they're compatible. This is the one that came with this machine. And this is one which I bought off eBay a few years ago. They are slightly different. You can see different generations. This one's actually been retrobrighted in the Uvinator. This one hasn't. This one is, as far as I understand, broken. I've never tested it, but I have to assume it is. But I think you can see there's a slight difference there in the key colors. So I've got a feeling that this is going to get a bit of a extra bit of retrobrighting at some point. I won't take the risk of putting this in for now, just in case it is broken. But I just wanted to show you that. I don't know if you can see that. The problem with this keyboard is it's actually quite bent as well. So it looked like it had a bit of a careless owner. So I'll just put this over to the side here. So let's put this in. It just needs to slide under these brackets here. I'll just look at this from the front so I can see this. I think it goes like that. There we are. Sitting on the rest correctly. And we need to put the keyboard connector in. Black goes over this way. Oh, actually, yeah, of course, no RF shield, so I don't have to worry about it going through the RF shield. Okay, so let's get this right. There we are. Keyboard is in. Right, so I think that's it, really. I think we just need to put this through, connect this up, and batten down the hatches. So let's see. We need to get this through here. Let's get this lined up. Yeah, there we go. Again, we'll get this rotated around, fit it in, looks good. Clipped on nicely. And then we want most of the cable to actually go through the case, right? I don't want it hanging out like this. So let's do that. That's good. Okay, having this here is going to make it a little bit awkward putting the screws back on, so I'll just have to hold it carefully, tip it over. Unfortunately, it's going to have to sit on it for now. And let's put these back in. Do them loosely to start. It's my preference. Just get them going in. Just for OCD's sake, we'll put this back where it began, as it did help us. There we are. Now we need to do the screws at the back. They're going in quite nicely. It's always a nice feeling when screws go into their holes nice and cleanly, not fighting. You know you've not made a mistake. These are obviously the right screws. There we are. I'm going to do these tight, but not super tight. There we are. Okay, now the ones at the front. These are going to be slightly more awkward, I think. Just pop this back. Let's try going at the back a bit. I think I might need to adjust this. I think I might need to take a bit of plastic off, so I won't force that for now. We'll do that another time. It's looking pretty good. Looking pretty good. Let's get the cables in. There we are. Let's get the mouse. Okay. Let's do a bit of a smoke test. Does it turn on? That's the most important thing. I'm seeing flash floppy on the flash floppy. It's looking great. It's working fine. 3.2 kickstart. Right then, let's get the sidecar and try and load some software. Okay, I've got the sidecar. It's ready to go. Let's get it plugged in. Can be a bit tricky to get it plugged in. Ah, there we are. Wonderful. Straight in. Okay, let's get the machine booting up. There we are, booting away. Does take quite a while to boot up. Need to do some research into that. What is the problem? Why does it take so long? I read on the manual for this device. Might be something to do with it searching for other SCSI devices. Not sure that's true. Because if you look here, it looks like the hard drive is active, but it just seems to take an age to actually load up into Workbench. Another thing I could do maybe is roll back to Kickstart 2 and go for Workbench 2, which would have been more period correct for this machine, I think. There we are, we're loaded up. So I've done a little bit of research off camera and I've done a little bit of work off camera. What I've done is I've actually loaded a bunch of games onto here using WinUAE. I've tried out a few of these and there is a little bit of glitching going on and I'm not quite sure why. So what I mean by glitching is that some of them, when they're loading, the screen goes black, the music stops and then it carries on. It's like it's halting and I'm not quite sure what's causing that. I'm not sure if this is slightly incompatible with the trapdoor expansion. And if that is the case, then we might have to expand the memory on the logic board rather than actually using the trapdoor expansion. That's something that we might have to do. I've read online that there is a bit of an issue. Unfortunately, it just says there is an issue, but it doesn't actually explain what it is. If you've got any ideas about that, then please write in the comments why I might be getting this stuttering. Another issue I found is that with WHD load, sometimes when you press the escape key to quit a game, it doesn't work. I think that's got something to do with one of the chips on this board, which I might have to buy a replacement for. So yeah, it's not perfect, but it's amazingly good compared to what I had when I bought it a couple of years ago. So let's try loading up a game. I did try out Xenon 2, and I found that that actually works without any issues as far as I could see. So let's just load it up. And this is using WHD load. There we are. So it says, skip the introduction. No, thank you. Let's carry on. I also tried Defender of the Crown. It stuttered. I tried the Chaos engine. That also had issues as well. Stuttering. Let's just put up the volume a bit. Takes a little while to load. Great music. Okay, I'll just press the joystick button. I plug this in. You actually need it to get past this little intro screen. Great scaling effects there. Something you could never have really done on the Commodore 64, I don't think. One of the sort of, at the time, something that was very, very impressive about the Amiga, the ability to do that, to handle such big bitmaps and move them around relatively fluidly. Again, the same thing, massive bitmaps being moved around, scaling, possibly done by John Phillips, bit of a technical wizard at the bitmaps, nice guy as well. And yeah, Mark Coleman, I think a fellow Welsh person. I think he still lives in Cardiff. I'm not sure about that. But him and Dan Malone, they basically defined the graphic style of the Bitmap Brothers, and probably two of the best bitmap artists in the UK, and so on. So we'll press the button to carry on into the game. Select player 1. It's loading the level. See, it went blank there for a second. That might have been an example of the issue. Just wait for it to load. And you can see the game itself seems to work pretty well. Yeah, I played this for a bit, and it doesn't really seem to have many issues. No stuttering actually in the game. Same thing with the Chaos Engine. Once you actually got into the game itself, it was fine. No stuttering, no screen going blank. But loading up, definitely a bit of an issue. And so that kind of indicates there's some kind of problem going on with the GVP maybe. Some kind of contention going on in the machine. So yeah, if you've got any ideas about that, please put those in the comments. Let's see if F10 works. And it does. So the machine is in much better shape now. It's actually usable to load multiple games, other software. I'm probably not going to use this machine for doing any productivity stuff. I think I'll keep that for the Amiga 2000 and the Amiga 4000. The Amiga 2000 can be thought of as a sort of high-end version of this machine, 68 or 30, more memory, etc. And then you've got the Amiga 4000, which is an AGA machine, and I can use that for AGA software. And also it's got the fastest processor, so I'll use that for productivity software when I test that stuff out in the future. What else can we do on this machine? Well, there's the issue with the screen going blank when I'm loading things. I'm not quite sure what's causing that, so we'll have to look into that. Like I said, if you can put any comments, if you know anything about that. I did see on a website, one of the two websites that has information about these devices, it says there is a problem with this device, with the Agnes that I have. I think it's the 8732, and the trapdoor expansion, but it doesn't tell you what the issue is, and it says it can be fixed by cutting a trace. Is that trace the trace that I cut to turn it into chip RAM? Is the problem solved? I can't tell, because unfortunately that page doesn't link to anything that actually goes into details about that issue. So for now, I don't really know what the fix is, unfortunately. I would like to try out the external SCSI on this. I've got the blue SCSI external, which can plug into the back of this here. Not sure how that's going to work with termination, because SCSI requires the end of a number of devices to be terminated. And I'm not sure if right now the internal device is, which might mean that if I plug something in, it's not going to work. If it does work, then it's actually quite a cool way of actually getting more games onto this machine. Because what I can do is I can define, let's say, a device 6, which isn't used right now, and I can plug it in, and it will appear as another hard drive on the desktop, and then I can actually transfer games onto this machine using that. So that's definitely something I need to try out. I might also retrobrite the keyboard, or possibly swap the keycaps from the broken keyboard that I showed you earlier, because that's already retrobrighted. If the keycaps are exactly the same, then I can't see really an issue with doing that. And then what I could do is obviously then retrobrite these, because they'd already be unplugged and ready to go into the Uvinator to get lightened up. Hopefully you've enjoyed this series. We've gone from my Amiga 500, sadly neglected for a couple of years due to the Amiga 2000 needing sort of emergency work. Also then actually the Amiga 4000 as well. They were demanding children. And this machine is now ready to go. We've got the GoDrive device. We've got a hard drive now. We've got a little bit more memory. Probably might put a little bit more memory in it. Actually, I might try and get this maxed out. And I'll try and work out what the stuttering problem is, if there's a way we can get that fixed. But that's it for now. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please like it. And if you like this video, please tell your friends about it. WhatsApp or on Facebook or any sort of social media. Obviously, if you want to see more videos from us, please subscribe, because I want you to come back and see more videos. Not just this video or future videos, maybe have a watch of some of our older videos as well, because I hope you'll agree they're equally as good as this one. So that's it for now. I hope to see you again in future videos. But for now, take care.